Chapter 1. Presence. When you enter, the space changes. There's a thin, almost silent physics to rooms and meetings, an electric tension that rearranges itself the moment someone walks in. Sometimes nothing obvious happens. No one stands, no one applauds, no one speaks. And yet the air tightens. Faces shift, conversations taper off. Presence is not about performance. It is about changing the field around you so that people unconsciously reorient themselves. The skill I want to teach you in this chapter is how to carry weight without wrestling, how to be felt rather than explained, and how to train the body and attention so that your mere arrival becomes an instrument. Begin by discarding the idea that presence equals volume. People often equate presence with big gestures, loud declarations, and visible dominance. That's cheap power. It grabs the surface, not the substrate. True presence is measured by how much other people adjust their behavior before you ask them to. The central principle is economy. Doing less so others do more. Think of a heavy stone placed gently in the middle of a calm pond. It doesn't shout. It redistributes the water. Your goal is to become that stone. Cultivating what I call energetic weight starts with the body. There is no mystical secret here. It's grounded physiology. Stand with your feet under your hips. Sense the connection to the ground. Let your spine be tall without stiffness. Most people either collapse insecure or brace defensive. The difference between presence and posturing is ease. Ease implies control. When your skeleton supports you cleanly, your breath flows, your voice finds depth, and your micro-movements slow. That combination reads to other nervous systems like competence. To achieve this, practice a daily drill that takes 10 minutes. First, breathe into your belly for 5 cycles. Inhale for 4 counts. Hold 1. Exhale for 6. Allow the exhale to be longer. This calms the nervous system and grants the chest a quiet lower register. Next, close your eyes and perform a 3-point scan. Feel your feet touching the floor. Sense the hollow at your throat. Notice the weight of your hands. Keep everything relaxed but anchored. Finish with 2 minutes of slow walking in a small space. Each step deliberate. Attention on how the heel meets the floor, how your center shifts. The point is to habituate grounded movement so that in public you default to it. Presence is not just how you stand. It is what you do with small pauses. The human brain is an expectancy machine. When you slow time by a half beat, by pausing before you speak, by letting your gaze linger, others unconsciously fill that silence with attention directed at you. Use the doorway pause. Before entering a room, stop at the threshold for 3 breaths. Look briefly, take in a layout, then step in with the same slow rhythm you practiced. That pause signals to others that you are composed and observant. It is tiny, repeatable, and far more powerful than an announced entrance. Control over facial micro-movements is another underestimated skill. Our faces leak everything: fear, irritation, boredom, often before words crystallize. Train in front of a mirror for 7 minutes a day. Practice neutral expressions, slight softening at the eyes, relaxed jaw, a hint of lift at the corners of the mouth without committing to a smile. Learn the art of the neutral face that still reads as open. When you master subtlety, your face becomes an instrument of calm rather than a scoreboard of impulse. Another dimension of presence is attentional investment. People feel presence most strongly when they sense someone is genuinely attending to what matters. This isn't performative listening. It's real. Make it a habit to slow your attention and match the energy of the person you're with for the first 30 seconds. If they speak fast and loud, lower your speed slightly. If they speak softly, soften your tone. This isn't mimicry. It signals attunement. When you do it well, People relax and become more receptive. The skill is in being curious rather than reactive. Your presence becomes a space where others can unfold. Training concentration and body control goes beyond exercises. It requires micro-practices embedded in daily life. One such micro-practice is the 3-second gaze. When someone approaches, hold eye contact for 3 seconds before smiling or speaking. Most people blink, look away, or rush to fill the space. Holding steady for 3 quiet seconds transmits composure. Another practice is the slow hand. In conversation, if you gesture, do it with intent and slowness. No waving, no pointing like a cop. The slow hand reads as deliberate leadership because it suggests you are not hurried by your own emotion. There's also value in rehearsing silence. We are culturally allergic to pauses because we mistake silence for lack of content. But silence is a lever. Try this simple conversation exercise. In a friendly exchange, make one statement and then remain silent for 5 seconds. Count inwardly. Chances are the other person will continue, reveal more, or shift in a way that gives you leverage to guide the interaction. Train this in low-stakes settings, coffee shops, with baristas, in short meetings, until it becomes comfortable. The power here is not to manipulate, but to create space where real things emerge. Influencing the atmosphere silently is partly about rhythm. People synchronize the rhythms, breath, speech cadence, even foot tap. If you want to influence a room, lead its rhythm subtly. Begin by attuning to the current tempo. Are people fast, distracted, somnolent? Then introduce a slightly slower and more deliberate tempo in your movements and voice. In a meeting, speak at a measured pace and allow pauses to land. Your tempo acts like a metronome. People will almost unknowingly align with it. Over time, they will feel steadier because you have provided a stabilizing beat. Language also contributes, but not through dictation. Use short, confident sentences. Avoid filling phrases. I think. Replace them with crisp, specific statements. Think less about convincing and more about clarifying. Clarity breeds trust, and trust amplifies presence. Finally, ethical orientation matters. Presence without conscience is intimidation. When your arrival changes a space, ask yourself what you want to create. Safety, curiosity, courage? Presence used well as a service. It steadies, opens doors. It gives people room to show up better. Keep that intention explicit. The most magnetic people I know do not seek to dominate the field. They make it more navigable for others. To make these ideas concrete, here is a short routine to practice daily. 5 minutes breath and scan. 5 minutes mirror neutrality. 5 repetitions of the doorway pause throughout the day. And 1 practicing conversation where you use a 5-second silence after a statement. Track how others respond. Notice who leans forward, who quiets, who becomes more expansive. Over weeks, these micro-habits become the muscle memory of presence. Presence is not a costume you put on. It is an atmospheric skill you cultivate. When you enter a room and the space changes, that shift should feel like arrival, not invasion. Your presence should be an invitation to attention, not an order. Master the body, the breath, the timing, and the ethical aim, and you discover a kind of influence that does not shout but still insists on being noticed. Chapter 2. Signals the subconscious hears. There is a silent conversation happening beneath words. It is constant, fast, and mostly unnoticed. Micro movements, the rhythm of breathing, the half-second pauses that puncture sentences. While we chatter about content, the subconscious mind of everyone in the room is listening to a different language, a language made of tiny gestures and timing. This chapter teaches you to speak that language, to read it, and to use it with integrity. Mastering it lets you steer how people feel before they form an argument in their heads. Begin by understanding the units of that language. Micro movements are the small, often unconscious motions. The tilt of the head, a flicker at the corner of the mouth, the tightening of the jaw. They last fractions of a second, but they're brutally honest. Breath is a metronome of emotional life. Its speed and depth correlate with calmness, urgency, fear, or ease. Pauses are punctuation in this hidden grammar. How long someone holds silence after a question says more than the words themselves. These elements form the substrate on which speech rides. If you can perceive and modulate them, you can guide perception before reason is kicked in. A useful way to start is with look, listen, calibrate. When you meet someone, for the first 5 seconds, do 3 things. Look, notice posture, eye contact, and facial tension. Listen, note pace of speech and breath rhythm. Calibrate. Adapt your tempo and energy to match theirs subtly. This 5-second calibration is not trickery. It's a short safety check. Are they agitated, reserved, playful, defensive? Matching a person's baseline creates rapport. Then you can nudge them toward a different state if you need to. Think of it like tuning an instrument before you play a song together. How to read quickly. Watch the jaw and throat for tension. It reveals guardedness. Notice shoulder height and hand positioning. Raised shoulders and closed hands hint at protection. Observe breathing. Fast, shallow breaths mean sympathetic arousal, stress, or excitement. Slow, even breathing indicates parasympathetic dominance, calm. Micro expressions across the upper face. Brief tightening of brow or rapid widening of eyes. Betray surprise, skepticism, or curiosity. Train yourself to see these as signals, not judgments. The goal is to collect information, not invent motives. Pauses deserve special attention because they're where the subconscious does its work. Most people fill silence with noise because they fear the vacuum, but silence is a mirror. It reflects how present someone is, how secure their claim feels. When you interrupt your own speech with intentional pauses, you invite the listener's nervous system to participate. A well-placed pause after a key phrase gives others a moment to internalize, to feel the truth behind the words. Conversely, when someone else pauses, resist the urge to jump in. Let the silence breathe. Often they will reveal something deeper if given the space. Breath synchronization is an advanced but accessible tactic. Humans naturally entrain to each other's rhythms. We mirror substratal things like breathing without thinking. If you notice a conversation partner breathing quickly, slow your own breath slightly and let your voice lengthen. Their nervous system will unconsciously follow towards slower breathing. This is not manipulation, it's regulation. Use it when calming is needed, when you want to lower the room's temperature before delivering news, or when you need to glean clearer thinking from a hurried colleague. Practice this in low-stakes contexts, cafes, queues, or catching a bus. Notice rhythm, adjust yours, and watch the micro shift in the other person. Confidence, in this subterranean lexicon, is transmitted, not proclaimed. People who shout about their certainty often overcompensate for inner doubt. Those who truly feel certain emit a different signal entirely. Emission is whole body, a steady breath, a compact posture without rigidity, a voice that carries depth more than volume, and facial micro-movements that stay neutral rather than reactive. Emitted confidence sits in the space between people and changes how their nervous systems interpret you. It's not about dominance. It's about gravitational pull. Others lean in because you create an expectation of safety and clarity. There are practices that will help you become fluent in these signals. First, mirror micro-practice. Spend 5 minutes a day observing a short video of a conversation or a public talk. Your phone is fine. Mute the sound and watch the faces. Identify 3 micro movements per minute: a brow twitch, a throat swallow, a hand flick. Then, without sound, try to recreate those micro patterns in the mirror and notice how your inner state shifts. This builds sensitivity and gives you control over your own subtle expressions. Second, the breathing metronome. Sit for 7 minutes. Place one hand on your chest and another on your belly. Inhale for 4 counts. Exhale for 6. After 3 days solid, start matching this breath quietly with a partner in conversation. Not as a show, but as a gentle stabilization. You'll notice tension fall and clarity rise within moments. This simple rhythm is one of the fastest ways to change the tempo of interaction. Third, the pause rehearsal. Choose a low-risk conversational partner, a friend, a barista, a colleague, and practice the 5-second pause. Say a short statement, then hold silence for 5 full seconds before allowing the conversation to continue. Count silently if you must. Do this 10 times across different days. Observe how often the other person fills the void and what they reveal. You'll become more comfortable with silence and more attuned to what it elicits. Now, let's talk about the ethical line. Learning these signals confers influence. Influence can be used to soothe and to exploit. Decide in advance what your moral horizon is. Use these tools to create clarity, to support others' autonomy, and to open spaces for authentic expression. Influence used to coerce, to gaslight, or to hide truths will leave a residue that your own micro-movements will betray. The subconscious is not blind. It notices misalignment between intent and signal. Integrity is the fastest way to sustain influence. Another practical aspect: vocal microcues. The subconscious listens to pitch fluctuations, speech tempo, and micro pauses in side phrases. A voice that drops slightly at the end of the sentence signals completion. A softening signals openness. People attune to these cues and assign meaning instantly. Urgency, warmth, doubt. Practice speaking with small tonal shifts and notice how the room reacts. But remember, tone without congruence feels fake. Match the feeling in your voice with your breath and posture, and you'll transmit something that feels and reads as authentic. When you are the listener, micro signals guide you to the truth of what is being said. If someone's words claim excitement, but their breathing is shallow and shoulders tense, the unconscious flags possible dissonance. Use that flag to ask gentle clarifying questions rather than to accuse. Listening to these signals gives you better information, and better information leads to better decisions. Finally, cultivate presence by cultivating patience. The subconscious deals in seconds and fractions of seconds. It evaluates, it tests, it recalibrates. Your job is to be steady enough to be read as steady. These hidden signals are subtle, but they compound. A day of practice posture, mindful breathing, and deliberate pauses can change how colleagues, friends, and strangers treat your ideas. Over months, these changes become part of your baseline, not a performance but an identity. The language beneath words is always speaking. Learn to hear it, to speak it with care, and to emit consistency. In that quiet conversation, you discover the most reliable road to influence, not through force, but through fidelity. Fidelity to your breath, your rhythm, and your truth. Chapter 3. The voice that changes decisions. Voice is the first tool people reach for when they want to be heard. But most voices are either background noise or a broadcast. Loud, fast, trying to force attention. There's another way. A voice that persuades without pressure, that rearranges choices in the listener's mind simply by how it sits in the room. This chapter is about the mechanics and ethics of a voice that moves decisions, tone, pause, timbre, tempo, and the almost magical practices I call the slow word and energetic silence. These are not tricks. They are skills grounded in breath, physiology, and a respect for other people's agency. First, a basic principle. Content carries intention, but form carries conviction. Two people can say the exact same sentence and produce opposite effects. One voice will prompt resistance. The other will invite consideration. The difference is not in volume alone. It's in steadiness, presence, and the way the voice maps onto the listener's nervous system. A persuasive voice is one your body can follow without alarm. It offers a rhythm, a steadiness, and a clarity that the brain interprets as safe and reliable. Decision-making prefers safety. Start with breath. The voice is an instrument played by breath. Without steady breath, there is no control. Practice a breathing pattern you can use before you speak. Inhale for 4 counts. Pause for 1. Exhale on your phrase. The pause between inhale and exhale is where intention crystallizes. When you do this, your voice gains a natural gravity. It is not about sounding deep for the sake of impressing. Depth without steadiness feels false. The resonance I advocate comes from supported breath, not from forcing the throat. Timbre matters more than pitch. Timbre is the color of your voice, the richness, the presence of harmonics. You increase timbre not by straining your vocal cords, but by opening your chest and softening the throat. Imagine sending your sound to the front of your face rather than through your throat alone. It thickens slightly and carries with less effort. Practice this by humming low for 30 seconds with a relaxed jaw, then speaking a simple phrase like, "Let's look at this," and noticing where the vibration lives. With practice, you'll find your words have more body, and body reads as credibility. Tone and tempo are relational. Rapid speech signals urgency, but often sacrifices clarity. Slow speech conveys deliberation, but can sound condescending if used poorly. The persuasive voice keeps a moderate baseline tempo and introduces deliberate variations. A slightly slower delivery at the end of a key sentence. A brief acceleration to emphasize energy. Use tempo like punctuation, not decoration. Every time you deliberately slow down, you give the listener's nervous system a chance to align with you. That alignment creates the mental space where decisions shift. Now for the slow word. Pick one critical word in the sentence, the hinge upon which meaning turns. Speak the sentence normally, but when you reach the slow word, slow completely. Stretch that syllable to half its usual speed, soften the breath behind it, and let silence follow for a beat. The slow word acts like a fulcrum. It enlarges the concept around it and lets meaning settle. For example, we need to change our approach strategy. Say the sentence, then land on strategy slowly and hold a beat. People will often feel compelled to either agree or ask a clarifying question. Either way, you have shifted the trajectory of the conversation. Practice the slow word in front of a mirror and with trusted listeners until it becomes natural. Complementing the slow word is energetic silence. This is not mere absence of sound. It is silence charged with attention after saying something important. Do not rush to fill the air. Hold the silence for 3 to 5 seconds with steady breath and an unreadable, calm face. Your eyes remain soft, not searching. That quiet becomes a magnet. People hate unresolved things. Your energetic silence becomes a gentle invitation to resolve by aligning with you. Use it sparingly and honestly. When overused, it becomes manipulative or theatrical. When used with integrity, it is astonishingly effective. Microprosody, tiny rises and falls inside phrases, also shapes decisions. A slight downward inflection at the end of a sentence signals closure, An upward tilt invites continuation. Use microprosody to guide. And with a slightly downward tone when making a recommendation, and leave an upward tilt when you want input. The ear is exquisitely sensitive to these curves. They cue the brain how to categorize what it hears. Deliberate practice involves reading short paragraph aloud and experimenting with different microprosodic shapes, listening back, and noticing how each shape would likely be received. The physical environment and your posture alter voice too. A slouched, collapsed chest shortens breath and produces thin sound. Stand or sit with a slightly elevated chest and relaxed shoulders. Allow the sound to resonate in your chest and head without pushing. If you're on a call, consider standing. It often frees the diaphragm and produces a more anchored tone. If you're in a group, position yourself where your voice can carry without forcing. The goal is influence, not domination. There's a moral dimension to voice that often goes unspoken. Voice is power. How you use it defines what kind of leader or companion you are. Use a persuasive voice to clarify, to foster collaboration, and to protect the dignity of others. Avoid employing these techniques to steamroll dissent, gaslight, or obscure truth. A convincing voice that hides bad intent will be seen through. Integrity colors a resonance in a way listeners feel, even if they cannot name it. Exercises help turn these ideas into habits. First, a single phrase drill. Choose a short sentence. This matters. And say it 10 times, varying breath support, timbre, and tempo. Record and listen. Notice which version feels most natural and true. Second, the slow word practice. In conversation, deliberately pick one word to slow and follow with 3 seconds of energetic silence. Start with trusted friends. Third, the resonance hum. Hum a low note for 20 seconds before an important talk or meeting to center breath and open resonance. These micro habits prepare your instrument quickly and reliably. Also practice active listening with vocal restraint. Often, we think influence requires constant input. The opposite is true. When you listen and then speak with the composure described above, the weight of your words increases dramatically. Decision makers are not persuaded by endless argument. They respond to clarity delivered from a place of calm. Finally, adaptiveness is essential. Different cultures and contexts prefer different vocal styles. Read the room and calibrate. The persuasive voice is not a costume worn in every situation. It is a set of options you choose from thoughtfully. In a crisis, a shorter, firmer tone may be needed. In negotiation, a softer, slower cadence can coax better outcomes. The goal is to offer a voice that reduces noise and increases clarity. Voice can change decisions because it changes how people feel before they think. When breath, timbre, pause, and tempo align with honest intention, the voice ceases to be a tool of persuasion alone and becomes a medium of clarity. Practice the slow word and energetic silence. Support them with real breath and resonance, and use them to make space for wiser choices. Influence that stems from a voice like this is not coercion. It is facilitation, an invitation to follow a clearer path. Chapter 4. Emotional silence. Influence through calm. There's a quiet tyranny to emotional reactivity. When someone floods a room with visible worry, indignation, or excitement, it pulls others into their orbit and erodes clarity. Emotional silence is not the absence of feeling. It is a deliberate cultivation of a calm field that invites coherence. In this chapter, one want to teach you how stillness becomes leverage, how a steady inner climate persuades more reliably than argument, how self-regulation functions as a higher form of strength, and how to prevent other people from draining your energy without turning into a cold, inaccessible person. This is the art of being powerful through stillness. First, understand why calm carries influence. Human beings are social regulators. We constantly sample others for cues about safety and threat. Emotional storms create alarm, and alarm narrows cognition. Calm, conversely, signals safety and frees the brain to think creatively and cooperatively. When you remain composed in a tense moment, you expand the bandwidth of everyone around you. People can hear alternatives, see options, and feel secure enough to take responsibility. Calm is a public good, rare, valuable, contagious. The core skill is emotional modulation. We are not robots. Feelings will arise. Modulation means allowing feeling to exist without being compelled to act on it immediately. The simplest method is a micro-interruption between impulse and response. Notice the impulse, a flare of anger, a spike of excitement. Then take one full breath before you speak or move. That breath is the minimal time required to shift from reaction to choice. In practice, this looks like pausing for the count of 4. Inhale 2, exhale 2. It's short enough to keep conversation flowing, long enough to change trajectory. Cultivating a baseline of calm is a different, longer game. Build a practice that retones your autonomic system. Daily exposure to repeated, mild stressors followed by recovery trains resilience. This could be a short cold shower, a brief interval of intense exercise followed by 5 minutes of slow breath, or deliberate exposure to mild social discomfort, a short, honest conversation. The point is not to seek trauma, but to practice recovery. The capacity to return to calm quickly is what makes emotional silence reliable rather than brittle. In social situations, emotional silence works through example and through selective response. Example means you keep your face and body language neutral and accessible even when others are loud. A relaxed jaw, an unmoving forehead, and an unclenched fist can communicate more than reassurance. People look for leaders in tension, and a non-reactive presence signals competence. Selective response means you don't amplify high drama with high drama. Instead, you respond with measured interest, clarify facts, and invite solutions. This approach disarms performative emotion and redirects energy towards solving. One practical technique is the soft mirror. When someone is upset, mirror their emotional intensity but at a slightly lower amplitude. If they are speaking loudly and fast, match the content but lower the volume and pace. This subtle dampening tells their nervous system it's safe to descend. Combine the soft mirror with a brief, validating phrase, "I see why that matters." Then offer a calm question. Which of these options feels most workable? Validation without joining the turbulence is crucial. It keeps the other person seen while maintaining the gravitational pull of calm. Another essential skill is boundary maintenance. Emotional silence requires you to protect your field without shutting others out. Use physical and temporal boundaries. Physically, maintain comfortable distance, close enough to show engagement, far enough to preserve your composure. Temporally, allow yourself breaks when conversations get heated. Excuse yourself to get water, step outside for 2 minutes, or shift the topic briefly. These pauses are not avoidance. They're strategic resets that preserve your capacity to influence later in the interaction. Learn to read the energy leaks that drain you. Not all emotional intensity is directed at you. Some people radiate unresolved stress. You don't have to absorb it. Use 2 quick checks, label and deflect. Label what you perceive out loud in neutral terms. I notice this is becoming tense. And then deflect by asking a practical question that moves attention away from the storm. What outcome are we trying to create? Questions refocus the group toward agency and away from venting. If the person persists in pulling you into emotional exchange, be explicit. I want to stay useful. Can we focus on what's next? That phrasing honors a person while stopping the bleed of your energy. Emotional silence is also a tool for influence when you need others to choose differently. People make choices using emotion more than logic. If you can maintain calm when opposition peaks, you create a contrast that makes your alternative more attractive. For example, in negotiation when the other party escalates, your steady demeanor reframes the interaction. Attendees begin to see escalation as a risky, unstable option, and steadiness becomes a safer route. This is not manipulation. It's strategic framing. You're showing what stable leadership looks like in real time. There is ethical care to observe. Calm can be used to suppress righteous emotion or to gaslight. If someone is genuinely harmed or needs to express grief, emotional silence without empathy is cruelty. Use calm to create space for real emotion to be processed, not to smother it. The highest practitioners of emotional silence know how to hold space. They are unflappable but emotionally available. You can be still and tender simultaneously. Practice shifting from composed presence to soft-hearted listening without losing your grounded posture. Practices make this habitual. Start with a daily recovery routine. 3 minutes of breath work in the morning, 10 minutes of movement midday, and a 2-minute body scan before sleep. In conversation, practice micro-interruptions. Before replying to any charged remark, count silently to 4. Use a soft mirror twice this week with different people and note the effects. Track your energy. At the end of each day, write one sentence about when you felt drained and one about when you successfully preserved calm. Over time, you'll see patterns, triggers, and reliable reset methods. A less obvious but potent practice is learning to name the emotion you feel before responding. Naming externalizes the feeling and reduces its intensity. Say mentally, anger, shock, or sadness. Then follow with a breath. Naming plus breath creates distance and choice. It's a small cognitive trick with outsized effect. It transforms feeling from a directive into information. Finally, cultivate a vision of influence as service. Emotional silence is not about controlling outcomes for personal gain. It's about maximizing the group's capacity to act wisely. When your calm produces clearer thought, better decisions, and fewer harms, you have used power well. Let that ethical frame be your North Star. When you act from service, your stillness carries a warmth that invites trust rather than fear. Emotional silence is quiet work with loud results. It takes practice to become habit. The micro-interruptions, the soft mirror, the boundary maintenance. But the payoff is enormous. You'll find your presence steadier, your relationships more durable, and your ability to shepherd others toward better choices significantly enhanced. In a noisy world, calm is revolutionary. In a frantic room, it is leadership. Learn to be that still point, and people follow not because they must, but because they want to. Chapter 5. The point of focus. How to read and lead others. There's a simple law hidden inside every social exchange. Attention is a currency of influence. Whoever directs the focus shapes perception. This is not about theatrical command or flashy tricks. It is about the quiet architecture of attention. In this chapter, one want to teach you how to read where attention lives, how to guide it without coercion, and how to lead a person or a group by becoming the stable point around which their awareness orbits. The practices I offer are practical, easily tested, and designed to preserve dignity while increasing your capacity to move people toward clearer choices. Start with the most basic skill, reading attention. Attention isn't always obvious. It lives in small signs. The drift of the eyes, the angle of the torso, the speed of blinking, the direction of the feet. Notice where people's faces turn when conversation begins to lag. Pay attention to body miniatures. A hand that taps a table wants release. A foot pointed toward the door signals disengagement. Quick inhalations mark anticipation. Train yourself to take a fast visual scan on arrival. Who is present in body but absent in mind? Who is leaning in? This quick map is the raw material for leadership. It tells you where to place your first step. The mirror practice is the easiest way to build rapport quickly and ethically. Mirroring is not mimicry. It is attunement. For the first 30 seconds with someone, discreetly mirror one or two of their nonverbal rhythms, breathing depth, head tilt, or speech tempo. Keep it subtle and respectful. The goal is to create a sense of shared tempo, a small synchrony that lowers social friction. Once rapport exists, you can gently modify your pattern to guide them. For example, match a hurried person's breath for a moment, then slow yours slightly. Their system will tend to follow the calmer rhythm. Mirroring says, "I see you." And seeing people are easy to lead because they relax into cooperation. Leading attention in a group is different from leading one person. Groups fragment. Attention splinters across side conversations and mobile screens. A useful habit is to create a single point of focus early and keep returning to it. Use physical anchors. A simple object placed on the table. A slide with one sharp phrase. A clear question written where everyone can see it. People gather around objects. A neutral object like a small stone, a candle of light, or a single slide with 3 words becomes a magnet because it externalizes where minds should live. Start your meeting by inviting people to look at that anchor for 3 breaths. This short ritual realigns scattered focus without grandiosity. Gaze is a powerful, underused lever. Where you look often determines where others look next, especially in small groups. Use your eyes not as a weapon, but as a pointer when you want someone to speak or to feel included. Hold your gaze on them for a beat longer than normal and soften it when you want to close a topic. Look gently at the center of the group and lower your gaze as if you've marked the end. Avoid rapid darting eyes. They fragment attention. A steady, calm gaze tells people where to place theirs, and eyes are a kind of conversational choreography. The psychological tactic I call attention absorption is a deliberate sculpting of mental spotlight. It's best used sparingly and honestly. Attention absorption begins with clarity. Be precise about what you want people to notice. Then reduce competing stimuli. Remove 1 or 2 visual distractions from sight. Lower extraneous noise. If possible, dim a screen or ask phones to be set face down. Then present your content as a short story or a single metaphor. Stories recruit attention more effectively than lists. The combination of reduced noise and a compelling narrative draws the mind inward. You are not stealing people's focus. You are offering a container where depth can occur. Another practical method for guiding groups is the spotlight rotation. Don't flood everyone with open questions. Instead, rotate brief invitations. Ask a specific person a focused question. Give them 30 seconds. Then move to the next person with the same structured ask. People prepare better when they know space will come to them. The rotation creates dignity and keeps attention moving to the room rather than spinning out in a few loud voices. It also makes leading easier because you become a conductor of attention rather than a competitor for it. Storytelling is one of the most robust ways to capture collective focus. Humans are wired to track causal sequences and characters. When you frame facts inside a tight narrative, a beginning, an obstacle, an inciting choice, people's minds enter a mode of simulation. They mentally rehearse outcomes, which is exactly what you want when you are asking for decisions or alignment. Keep stories short, concrete, and anchored to an image or name. An image gives imagination something to hold. And imagination is the engine that sustains attention beyond the immediate moment. There are quieter techniques too. Use a soft anchor phrase, a short, repeatable line that you say at pivot points. Notice there's two things. Here's the choice. Repetition builds a Pavlovian signal. When you say it, heads lift and ears orient. Keep the phrase brief and use it sparingly. Overuse makes it meaningless. Pair it with a micropause. The phrase signals importance. The pause gives people time to bring their attention to it. You will face resistance. People don't always want to be guided. When attention resists, don't push. Instead, ask a question that reframes the frame. What will be most useful for you to decide here? This kind of question moves agency back to them and often dissolves subtle opposition. Leading attention without permission is coercive. Leading with invitations preserves autonomy while still guiding outcome. Reading and leading also involves ethical attentiveness. Attention is precious and finite. Use your ability to direct it to create value, clarity, safety, progress. Avoid spectacle that distracts from substance. If you must use emotional hooks, make sure they connect to honest purpose. Ask yourself before every leadership move, does this help people make a better choice? If the answer is yes, proceed. If the answer is no, hold back. Practice is simple and repeatable. In small conversations, practice the 3-second gaze, the single anchor object, and the mirror breath. In meetings, bring a neutral object as an anchor. Conduct a 1-minute breathing pause at the start, and use spotlight rotation for input. Keep notes on what captures attention and what diffuses it. Over time, you'll develop an intuitive sense of tempo, when to speed, when to slow, when to silence. Leading attention is ultimately about responsibility. When you can read where minds are and guide them with integrity, you shape not only decisions but the quality of others' experience of being present. That is a form of leadership that asks less of domination and more stewardship. People remember not the loudest voice, but the one that made them see clearly. Make your point of focus a place where clarity lives, and others will follow because their minds find rest there. Chapter 6. Architect of Reality. Influence through vision. People do not simply follow capability. They follow clarity. Watch a room when a person speaks with a clear map of the world. Not a checklist of actions, but coherent narrative that explains why things are as they are and where they can go. You'll see a subtle magnetism. Eyebrows lift, shoulders ease. The scatter of attention draws inward. That magnetism is not charisma alone. It is the gravity of constructive reality. In this chapter, one show you how to become an architect of reality, how to build an inner vision that others can perceive and trust, how to translate that vision into gestures and language that magnetize, and why your energy of direction equals their trust. First, the anatomy of a compelling vision. A vision is not a slogan. It has 3 parts: a diagnosis, what's wrong with the current map; a possibility, what could be different and better; and a pathway, the first obvious next step. The diagnosis provides context. People need to know why change matters. The possibility gives hope, the direction for their imagination. The pathway reduces anxiety by showing the next physical move. When these 3 are present and coherent, people can mentally simulate the future and decide to join. Your job as an architect is to make that simulation easy and emotionally attractive. To build this kind of vision, you must start inside. Too many leaders dress up borrowed ideas. True architects hold an internal picture, so vivid it affects their posture and voice. Begin with a personal clarity exercise I call the frame practice. Spend 20 minutes with a single question. What truth about the world would I bet my reputation on? Write 3 versions of the answer. 1 sentence, 1 paragraph, and 1 image. The image forces concreteness. Landscapes and metaphors feel real to the mind. Refine until the sentence is crisp and the image stable. This is your seed. When you speak from that seed, your energy carries direction because it is rooted in internal conviction rather than fleeting enthusiasm. Vision shows up as energy. People sense direction before they hear the words. If your internal map is muddled, your body will leak hesitation, small hesitations in breath, a shallow timbre, micro movements that betray doubt. Conversely, when you have a clear vision, your breath deepens, your gestures become purposeful, and pauses land like markers on a route. Train this alignment before any important conversation. Take a moment to rehearse the frame practice silently. Recall the 1-sentence truth, breathe into it, and feel the image in your chest. That energetic rehearsal does more to magnetize others than a rehearsed PowerPoint. Translate vision into small, repeatable signals. People do not absorb lengthy manifestos in a single sitting. They need short hooks that recur in aggregate. Choose 3 short phrases that encapsulate your diagnosis, possibility, and pathway. These become your micro-narratives. Say them often, but in different registers. Once as a story, once as a question, once as a blunt claim. Repetition makes a map legible. The goal is not propaganda, but legibility. To make your map easily read so others can find their place on it. Stories are the scaffolding of belief. Abstract statements are forgettable. Particular stories stick. When you present your vision, anchor it with 2 short stories. One from the past that explains the current problem, and one imagined near-future vignette that shows the possibility realized. Keep both stories tight and sensory. Names, a brief dialogue, a concrete outcome. This contrasts the before and after in a way brains prefer. People begin to inhabit the imagined future simply by following your story. That is how an idea becomes magnetic. There is also a ritual architecture that boosts trust. Rituals are tiny, predictable actions that make a larger narrative feel real. Pick a single ritual that signals commitment to your vision. A weekly short update, a 2-minute morning question asked aloud, a shared object that marks progress. Rituals create continuity and reduce cognitive load. When people know what to expect, they can align without constant negotiation. The ritual becomes evidence that the vision is not ephemeral. Language matters. Use directional verbs and concrete nouns. We will build, we will test, we will keep are stronger than maybe, should, or might. Avoid abstraction where action is possible. Concrete language converts imagination into plans, and plans invite coaction. Couple that language with clear time frames. Short horizons reduce fear. If your vision spans years, break it into increments people can see, and celebrate each checkpoint. Trust is accelerated by small wins. The pathway element of your vision should include an early, visible win, something achievable within a week or a month that demonstrates progress. A visible outcome reorients skeptical attention toward possibility. Design these wins intentionally. They must be meaningful, not performative. When people see that the map leads somewhere positive quickly, their baseline skepticism softens and their commitment deepens. Architects of reality must also manage descent gracefully. Not everyone will buy the map, and some will test its seams. Anticipate critique and treat it as data. Convert skepticism into clarity by asking targeted questions. What specifically in this picture feels unlikely to you? Or which step would you change and why? Listening to dissent and then adjusting shows that your vision is robust, not brittle. It's a paradox. Confidence that includes correction breeds more trust than unbending certainty. Energy of direction equals their trust is not a slogan but a practice. Your directional energy is a consistent projection of the vision. The way you stand behind it, how you reference it in small moments, and how you enact it in decisions. People don't just follow ideas. They follow someone who consistently orients toward the same place, especially when the path is uncertain. Consistency communicates that the map is tested in your life and choices. Ethics are central. Building a reality for others imposes responsibility. Ask yourself, whose world is your map centering? Who might be marginalized by this direction? The best architect design inclusive maps that account for varied needs and invite co-authorship. Influence through vision should expand others' agency, not narrow it. When in doubt, choose transparency. Reveal assumptions, trade-offs, and what you don't know. Honesty about limits actually deepens trust because it reduces the risk of surprise. Practical practices to weave vision into daily life are simple. Start each day by reading your one-sentence frame aloud. At meetings, open with a short ritual and one of your micro-narrative phrases. End decisions by linking them back to the pathway step. Once a week, tell the two stories, one past, one near future, to someone outside your inner circle. This keeps the image fresh and testable. Track 3 small wins monthly and share them. Visible outcomes are the mortar between story and belief. Finally, be willing to revise the map. Reality resists tidy plans. The architect's humility is the ability to update while staying anchored. When new data appear, adjust the pathway, not the underlying integrity of the vision, unless the vision itself proves false. Leaders who shift frequently without demonstrating why lose trust. Leaders who never shift lose accuracy. The craft is to be rooted enough to provide direction and flexible enough to adapt the path. To be an architect of reality is to be someone who offers a clear, testable picture of what could be, and then obliges themselves to build it with integrity. When your internal clarity, your ritual signals, your stories, and your small wins align, your energy of direction becomes visible and trustworthy. People will follow because you have made the future legible and inviting, not because you demanded it, but because you built a place where they want to stand. Chapter 7. Silence, Power, and Love. Power without care is brittle. Silence without warmth is cold. Influence that endures is a tender architecture. It holds strength in one hand and service in the other. In this final chapter, one will bring the threads together and show you the highest form of influence, one that is experienced as both authority and affection, firmness and freedom. This is a place where silence becomes an act of love, where presence steadies rather than coerces, and where people want to follow you even when you say nothing at all. That paradox is the heart of mature power. Begin by shifting your question about influence from how do I get people to do what I want to how do I make it safer and easier for people to show up fully. The texture of your inner answer will change everything. Influence rooted in extraction, in getting something for yourself at others' expense, produces short-term compliance and long-term erosion. Influence rooted in care produces willingness, creativity, and loyalty. Love here is not sentimental mush. It is a practical orientation toward other people's dignity and flourishing. When you hold influence as a resource to steward, silence becomes a way to protect that resource rather than to hoard it. The first practice is presence as service. Enter rooms with the intention of enlarging other people's capacity, not of marking territory. This means making small choices that remove friction for others, asking concise questions, naming the unspoken, offering brief summaries of where attention should be, and creating space for quieter voices. Presence as service uses the skills you've learned, breath, pause, gaze, calibrated tone, to reduce noise and invite clarity. The paradox is that by serving others' ability to think and speak, you become the gravitational center. People naturally orient towards someone who makes them perform better. Transforming strength into calm is partly technical and partly ethical. Technically, you use breath and posture, so your body signals reliability rather than threat. Ethically, you hold yourself accountable for the consequences of your influence. Ask yourself before you act, does this protect or diminish someone's agency? Answering honestly trains you away from reflexive control. When the answer is protective, proceed. When the answer is coercive, pause and reframe. This is how power matures. It becomes a set of disciplined choices that privilege autonomy over obedience. Silence framed by love is different from silence framed by withdrawal. There are lonely silences, the ones used to punish, to avoid, to create distance. Then there are held silences, pauses that gather people into reflection, that allow grief to surface or insight to arrive. To practice held silence, start small. In a conversation, after someone shares something vulnerable, resist the immediate impulse to fix or to advise. Instead, breathe, soften your face, and offer a brief, present pause. Allow the silence to be a container. It tells the other person that whatever they have offered can be held without being dissolved into action words. That holding is often the most healing thing you can give. Another practice is the compassionate mirror. When someone is upset, reflect back not just the content of their words or the feeling under them. That sounds painful rather than that's unfortunate. Use a steady voice and a slightly slower tempo. The mirror acknowledges internal reality without agreeing or fixing. It creates a space where the person can choose their next step rather than being driven by reactivity. Over time, people learn that with you they can be more honest, and honesty invites deeper alignment. Love in leadership also means being clear about boundaries. Loving silence should not become permissiveness. People need containment as well as care. State limits calmly and kindly. I want to help, and I can't do that while we're blaming each other. Let's focus on what we can change. Boundaries are a way of directing energy toward constructive channels. They are the scaffolding of a healthy field. Without them, warmth dissolves into chaos. There's a courage to using silence with love. It requires you to withstand discomfort, to resist filling voids with ego, and to trust other people's capacity to arrive. That trust is a gift that often returns multiplied. When you model calm receptivity, others learn to trust themselves in your presence. They begin to try, fail, speak, and decide without waiting for permission. Your silence becomes a fertile ground for independence rather than dependence. Practically, integrate 3 habits into your daily life to embody this final stage of influence. Habit 1, the compassion pause. Before responding to anything that triggers you, an email, a criticism, a heated exchange, take 1 long exhale. Use that breath to imagine the other person as imperfect but deserving of dignity. Then respond to clarity and kindness. Habit 2, the holding practice. Once a week, choose a conversation where you intentionally offer held silence. Tell the person, I'm going to listen without interrupting, and practice not rescuing. Notice how much more emerges when you hold rather than fix. Habit 3, the boundary phrase. Prepare a short, calm line you can use when energy becomes destructive. I want us to be useful. Can we focus on solutions? Use it with warmth, not bluntness. Love also requires the humility to be wrong. When your influence has unintended harm, acknowledge it openly. Apologize concisely. repair where possible, and explain what you will do differently. This small act of contrition reestablishes trust faster than any rational justification. People forgive leaders who are human and responsible far more readily than those who insist on always being right. The most magnetic leaders I've known are quietly unselfish. They reserve the loudest signals for others' achievements, magnify the work of their teams, and accept credit sparingly. Their silence becomes a stage for others' voices, not because they lack ego, but because they choose a larger purpose than immediate recognition. This kind of influence grows roots. It creates communities where people perform not for a trophy, but because the work itself is meaningful and because they feel respected. Finally, remember that influence is not accumulation. It is circulation. Power that flows to others and returns enriched is healthier than power that pools. Use your silence to create circulation. Listen more, speak less, enable more people to act, and watch how the field transforms. That transformation is not only tactical, it is moral. You will find your life fuller, your relationships deeper, and your decisions clearer when influence is practiced as a form of loving stewardship. Silence, power, and love are not three separate things to juggle. They are a single posture. Strength without tenderness is brittle. Tenderness without strength is directionless. When you hold both, your silence becomes a language, one that calls people to presence, invites their best thinking, and lets them choose to follow. Practice this posture until it becomes reflexive, and you will be the kind of person others want to listen to even when you say nothing at all. Conclusion: you now have a map, presence that changes a room, a fluency in subconscious signals people send, a voice that moves decisions, an inner calm that steers emotion, the skill to read and guide attention, the ability to craft and share a compelling vision, and finally the integration of silence, power, and love as the highest form of influence. None of this is magic. It is practice. Each chapter offered concrete habits, breath patterns, pause rehearsals, mirror practices, attention anchors, ritual frames, compassionate holds. Taken together, they form a discipline that is both subtle and transformative. Start small. Choose one practice from each chapter and do it for 30 days. Track changes in a notebook, a line per day noting one moment when your practice produced a different outcome. Over time, you'll see patterns emerge. New trust, fewer escalations, clearer meetings, deeper conversations. Remember the ethical through line. Influence without care corrodes. Influence as service builds. Keep returning to that moral question. Does this enlarge others' freedom and dignity? If your answer remains yes, you are on the right path. Change will not happen in a single dramatic moment. It accumulates in micro shifts. A pause in a meeting that calms a room, a slow word that redirects a choice, a compassionate silence that invites truth. Those micro shifts compound into reputation, then into culture. Your work is not to perform power, but to become a steady source of it. The kind people trust because it is gentle, principled, and useful. Carry this book as a practical companion, not a checklist. Revisit chapters when you face particular challenges. Teach these practices to someone you care about. Influence grows faster when it is shared. And finally, cultivate patience with yourself. The most enduring leaders are the ones who learn to fail gracefully, repair quickly, and return to practice. In a noisy world, be the still channel through which people find clarity. In a frantic field, be the calm that makes space for thought. In a broken moment, be the gentle strength that invites repair. When silence, power, and love align in you, influence becomes a gift for others and for yourself. Conclusion: influence is neither a performance nor a set of tricks. It is a cultivated field inside you that quietly reshapes the world around you. Over these pages, you learn how presence rewrites the room, how the subconscious reads the smallest signals, how voice and silence move decisions, how calm converts conflict into clarity, how focused attention guides groups, how a clear inner vision magnetizes others, and how the truest power is service shaded with love. None of these elements work in isolation. They are threads of a single fabric, woven together. They create an identity that others trust because it is steady, humane, and purposeful. This book is an invitation to practice, not a promise of instant mastery. Start with small, repeatable habits. 3 breaths before you speak, a 5-second pause in a conversation, a daily 3-minute posture and breath routine, a single weekly held silence practice. Track one concrete change each day in a notebook. What you tried, what shifted, what felt uncomfortable. Little wins compound. Over time, those micro decisions become the baseline of how you move through rooms and relationships. Keep the ethical question at the center of your work. Does this enlarge others' dignity and agency? If your answer is yes, proceed. If it is not clear, choose restraint. Influence lived as service produces deep, durable results. Influence lived as extraction leaves a quiet erosion that you will feel in your own body and relationships. Teach these skills. Influence multiplies when shared, not as a way to dominate, but as a way to raise the floor for everyone's capacity to act, speak, and care. Invite one person to try a practice with you for 30 days. Compare notes. Learn together. Finally, accept that the path is iterative. You will falter, overstep, and learn. Apologize when needed. Repair where possible, and return to practice with humility. Influence grounded in steadiness and compassion becomes a force for good, a way to make spaces clearer, choices wiser, and lives richer. Carry this work gently. Use silence as care, voice as clarity, and presence as shelter. When you do, people won't follow because they must. They'll follow because they want to,